Focus on what you can get done in advance, do a good job in executing, and then reap the benefit for the next decade. I learned an important lesson in public service. The issues with the most impact are those that have cascading consequences. There's a clock in the grand parlor of the governor's residence that may be 9 feet tall. One day there was a clock repair person reviewing why it wasn't working, and my daughter was watching him work. And he had her stand on a chair and examine a series of gears that were very small, about the size of a dime, connecting to those about the size of a nickel, and then a quarter, and then a silver dollar, working up to almost the size of a bike sprocket. He said to her, "Try to move the little gears." And she took her fingers and tried to move them back and forth and said, "They're stuck, I can't move them." "Move the big gear," he said. So she took both hands, took the one the size of a bike sprocket, and was able to move it a little bit left and a little bit right. "What happens?" he said. "All the little ones spin." I realized that was a wonderful metaphor for how public policy often works. We try to fix little things, but the reality is they're harder than if you move the big gear when all of those smaller gears begin to turn. I began to ask myself, so what are the big gears in keeping the state prosperous? Well, one of those would be infrastructure. We have to have highways. At the time, the traffic on I-15 was simply unbearable. We had to fix it. So there's a big gear that has consequences in the economy. Another big gear was the Olympics. The Olympics was a 17-day activity that all turned out well. It was 7.5 years of preparation, but the impact has been for decades because Utah gained a reputation in the world. We learned we could compete with the world and win. Every business learned to be better at things. Those are events that have big gear implications. And so a big part of what I have learned is to focus on the big gears and spend my time as a public leader focused on those things with those cascading consequences. I also came to realize that being governor, for example, is not simply about the constitutional authority to exercise that authority. It's a power that people have to be able to lead entire communities through actions and through words and through example and through establishing a public agenda. It's a very unique opportunity and one that I'll always be grateful I had. It's actually hard to conceive of today when our life is so consumed by technology. But not too long ago, when I became governor, none of that existed, but you could see it begin to develop. We were seeing the internet. We were seeing the use of data and information in ways that hadn't been seen before. And it was evident to me that the economy of the future needed to be prepared to become a technology capital. I began to visit Silicon Valley on a regular basis. I set a goal that I would be there more as governor than the governor of California was there. And I went literally door to door, meeting with technology CEOs, with thinkers and others who could be of influence. And we had a very simple story. It is, you can get to Utah in about the same time it takes to drive from Stanford to Berkeley. So bring your company to Utah to grow it out. Now we knew if we could get them to start doing that the people who came with it, or the people who stayed here, would be the entrepreneurs of the future. We had to change a lot. People of our state had to develop new skills. We had to put infrastructure in place. But we're facing it again with the advent of the AI era. We have to change our education system to incorporate it. We have to find ways of teaching people how to use it. We need to not be afraid of it. We need to weigh in to become a leader in AI in the same way we have become a leader in technology generally. As I look back, the most significant things that were accomplished had common characteristics. One was they take time. Anything with real consequence in a community is going to take 5 years or more. And the second thing I learned is that virtually none of them can be done by one person or even a small group. It requires collaboration within a community because always there's complexities that affect people. And without collaboration, nothing of real consequence occurs. Utah has had a long history of good leadership at the legislature, as governor, in local officials. It's because we view government as something we do on a temporary basis to make the community better, and then we move on. It's been 20 years since I concluded my service as governor. And some might say, is it relevant still to write about things that happened 20 years ago? I've come to appreciate that it takes at least that amount of time to determine what worked and what didn't. One of the things I've taken away is that things that seemed almost impossible to solve have been solved. And things that I was deeply worried about, people with innovation have stepped up with solutions. So as I look at the current day, it leaves me with a lot of optimism that there are very few things that a community cannot solve if they work together in unity and in collaboration, and that the future is bright for such a place.